I would like to thank each of you for coming out tonight. We have arranged for the Chief of Police candidates to meet the public tonight and answer some questions for you. Before we begin, there are some things I would like to go over with you. There are public restrooms in this building. Men's are on the other side of the corridor. The women's are right outside this door to the right. There are refreshments for you in the back, which you are welcome to. The candidates have not seen these questions. I will only have 2 minutes to answer the questions. We will leave room at the end of the program to give the public an opportunity to ask their questions to the candidates. There will be no heckling or disrespectful behavior tolerated during tonight's event. Failure to comply with will result in the removal. There will be no interviews of any kind given by the candidates. Candidates, go ahead and take a seat and we'll begin. Please begin by providing us a brief history of your career highlights and why you feel you are well suited for this position of Chief of Police. Let's begin with Tammy Burr.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you all for attending this event. My name is Tammy Burr, and I've been in public service for over 35 years. I began my public service with the United States Air Force, where I served for 10 years, ending my career at Lackland Air Force Base, where I served as a master military training instructor. After I opted to separate from the Air Force after 10 years, I joined the Bexar County Sheriff's Office in San Antonio, Texas. For the next 23 and a half years, I spent my time there. I started as a detention officer in a 4,000-bed jail and transferred over to patrol soon thereafter, progressively promoting through the ranks all the way up through captain. In 2013, I was honored to be selected for an appointment to a position as deputy chief, and I was placed over the Judicial and Court Services Division, which I managed judicial services, fugitive apprehension, civil process, mental health, an emergency response team, as well as many, many other units within that division. Throughout my career, I've been fortunate enough to have gained a broad-based experience across the spectrum of law enforcement, everything from patrol to traffic, DWI, narcotics, investigations, civil process, just everything across the spectrum of law enforcement.
Up next, we'll hear from candidate Jesus Campa. Same question as well. Please start off by providing us a brief history of your career highlights and why you feel you are suited for the Chief of Police position.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Jesus Eduardo Campa, born and raised here in El Paso, Texas. Began my law enforcement career in 1994 with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. Started off as a detention officer. 20 years later, retired as the Chief Deputy of Law Enforcement. During my career, served as a school resource officer, community resource officer, DARE officer, field training officer, and retired, as I said, retired as the Chief Deputy of Law Enforcement, where I oversaw all the law enforcement divisions to include narcotics, special support services, criminal investigations, and narcotics. I retired, became the Chief of Police at the Ector County Independent School District for a short time before accepting the job in Marshall, Texas. I don't know if anybody's familiar with Marshall, Texas. Marshall, Texas is in Far East Texas. When I was hired on to be a change agent to, it's a community that's very racially divided, and I was the first Hispanic police chief to take over that department, first minority. We had a lot of challenges. We worked through them. I was able to get the department recognized in under 2 years as a best practices department. I believe that we brought the racial gap together by creating a program that I called No Colors, No Labels. We did a lot of good things, a lot of technology upgrades, things like that. My education, I'm currently working on a PhD in criminal justice. I have a master's degree in the administration of justice and security, bachelor's degree in criminal administration, criminal justice administration. My experience, 20 years, I've been working on the border, providing services here. When I first started patrol, Socorro was still it still kind of belonged to the sheriff's office. We were still patrolling the area. So I got to learn a lot about the border community, work with the border community a lot. And that's why I feel that my experience and my formal education is what qualifies me to be the next Chief of Socorro. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Eric Herrera, same question. Please start off by providing us a brief history of your career highlights and why you feel you were suited for the position of Chief of Police.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eric Herrera, and thank you for all coming here for this community meeting. I began my career in 1982 with the Doña Ana County Sheriff's Office in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Before the buzzword of community policing, we practiced community policing. I used to patrol the little towns of La Union, New Mexico, San Miguel, Sunland Park, Chaparral, Anthony. So you get to know the people pretty, in a pretty personal basis. From there, I went to the El Paso Police Department, went up the ranks progressively from sergeant, lieutenant. I retired as a regional commander of one of the command stations in El Paso. I did a lot of variety of assignments while in El Paso, patrol. I was a field training officer, traffic enforcement. I was a motorcycle officer, community services, and on. Oversaw the gang unit in El Paso, and just a very good career. Had several chiefs there, and I'm glad that Chief Greg Allen is still the chief in El Paso. After I retired from El Paso Police Department, I moved. I was helping a friend of mine in Sunland Park, New Mexico, with the administration. He's currently the chief of police for the El Paso Community College. From Sunland Park, New Mexico, I went to Pecos, Texas, of all places. It's an oil field town right now. I was a patrol deputy there. I got to wear a cowboy hat. I had a lot of fun down there. From there, I put in for the job for chief of police for the city of Uvalde. It's about 70 miles southwest of San Antonio. I was there for 4 years, and we had a really good department, it still is, and we did a lot of good things there.
Thank you for your time. Mr. Rico, same question for you. Please start off by providing us a brief history of your career highlights and why you feel you are well suited for the position of Chief of Police.
Good evening. My name is Manuel Rico. I'm originally from San Antonio, Texas. This is where I attended the academy. Right before that, I did 4 years in the military. I did 2 years in Germany, 2 years in El Paso, and that's why I wound up coming back to El Paso after I got my peace officer certification in San Antonio. I initially started as a patrolman. I was a patrolman probably about 3 or 4 years. I moved up to detective. I was detective probably about another 3 years. After that, I got promoted to sergeant. And one of the differences is that as a sergeant, I was in charge of operations. So since after a sergeant, I got promoted to lieutenant when a new chief came in. And then as a lieutenant, we promoted 2 sergeants. After a lieutenant, I wound up becoming the assistant chief. And as the assistant chief, I wound up promoting 2 lieutenants. So I was in charge of the operations. My education is, I have some college. I went to the FBI National Academy, graduated from the FBI National Academy in 2004, class of 219. After that, I'm still in charge of the operations division. I'm also in charge of the IA division.
Thank you. Next question. Why do you want to be our chief of police, and what do you know about our department? Mr. Rico, we'll start with you.
Being from Horizon City, Texas, I was there for 22 years, and I got to know Socorro. My family was raised in Socorro. I have 2 kids that go to school here. My kids go to Socorro High School, and because of that, I feel I have strong ties to the community. I know the Socorro Police Department as well, and I think everything that I've learned in Horizon City as far as running the operations, along with that, also doing parts of the budget, I think I can bring a lot to this community, and I think I can bring a lot of experience to the Department of Socorro. I understand the community. I have relatives in the community, and I think my heart is in this community, and I would love to be able to serve it.
Thank you. Mr. Herrera, same question. Why do you want to be our chief of police, and what do you know about our department?
It would be an honor and a privilege to serve as your chief of police for the Socorro Police Department. I have 36 years of law enforcement experience. When I was assigned to the Lower Valley Station on Zaragoza and Escobar, we worked on a regular basis with the Socorro Police Department. So I have ties to the community. I'm born and raised in this area, El Paso, La Union, New Mexico, Las Cruces. So I have family ties here as well. I believe that my experience, my knowledge, my training, and my education would serve to enhance the department and to improve the quality of life of the community and reduce the fear of crime. By working together, just because you're the chief, you can't do everything. You need to support the community. So I'd make it a priority to do everything I can to get the support of the community for the police department and treat our officers well and establish an Employee of the Month program is very important. But based on all that, I think I would be a good candidate, and my experience, education, and my ties would serve the Socorro Police Department and the citizens, more importantly.
Thank you. Mr. Gampa, same question. Why do you want to be our chief of police, and what do you know about our department?
Yes, sir. I'd like to be the chief of police for the city of Socorro for several reasons. Again, born and raised here in El Paso, Texas. I have a lot of ties to the community, El Paso County. I've spent 20 years working in this area. When I first came out to patrol back in 1998, yes, 98, as I said, we worked closely with the Socorro Police Department and worked closely with the city of Socorro as it started growing and expanding. And, I was privileged enough, I don't know if privileged is the right word to say, to work in this community when there was an infusion of gang violence here. It was overrun by a lot of gangs and stuff like that, and we played an integral role working with the Socorro Police Department to try to abate that issue. So the fact that I've got a good working relationship with El Paso County as a whole, with the Sheriff's Office, the Police Department, city, county commissioners and stuff like that, I think that I bring a different dynamic to the city of Socorro. One of the things that I'm really excited about is implementing a lot of community-based policing. Right now, community-based policing has always been a catchword. The new popular word in policing right now is procedural justice, which is a different form of community-based policing. And I'm looking forward to being able to change the image that a lot of the people, this preconceived image that a lot of people have of Socorro. As I mentioned to you yesterday when we were driving around, that I was very impressed with the proactive things that the city of Socorro has done for its citizens and its community, and just to see how well the city of Socorro has grown and adapted to a lot of things. I think that a lot of people have the wrong preconceived notion of this community, so I would like to be part of the team that's going to change that. So those are some of the reasons, as well as the fact that I understand border community. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Byrne, why do you want to be our chief of police, and what do you know about our department?
I want to be the chief of police because I want to be the face of change for this department and to help with the face of change for this city. As you all know, it's been riddled in the past with public perception that is not always positive, and that's what I want to change. I love a challenge, and I think I'm up to that challenge. I want to employ servant leadership. We work for the community, and that's who we need to listen to and who we need to invite to work with us to change the face of the community and to change the face of the police department. I want to be the chief of police because I know that I can accomplish this goal. I want to be the chief of police. I am not from this area, and I give my brothers here credit. They have worked in the area, so they are very familiar with some of the things that have gone on here. I am not from the area. I have no ties to the area, but I can tell you one thing. I have the courage to act in the best interest of the city of Socorro before I act in the best interest of any one individual. I will put a positive spin on the police department, and I will assist in putting a positive spin on the city of Socorro. Thank you.
Thank you. Socorro is the 19th safest city in Texas. What do you bring to the city to continue to keep us safe? Ms. Spur, we'll start with you.
I bring the concept of community policing. During my 23 and a half years at the Sheriff's Office, I realized the importance of community policing and how we can employ that to change the city for the better, to change the residents' lives for the better. When I first went into law enforcement, I was selected to go to a community policing unit. Well, as time went on, I realized that community policing is not about one unit out there doing one thing for one part of the city. It's about a whole idea that the police department has to buy into. And I think that's what we need to do to continue to keep the city of Socorro safe. I think we need to get involved and get with our business leaders and not only talk to formal leaders of the community, but we need to talk to those informal leaders of the community as well, because those are our eyes and ears, and those are the people out there that are gonna help us as the police department to keep the community safe. So I think community policing is the foundation of everything that we can do to keep this community safe and to continue to build on that safest community title.
Thank you. Same question. Mr. Campa. Socorro is the 19th safest city in Texas. What do you bring to the city to continue to keep us safe?
Yes, sir. My experience working with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office for 20 years, closely working with the El Paso Police Department. As you know, El Paso City, El Paso County has usually been one of the safest communities in the entire state, you know, considering that we have the border violence issue, which doesn't really spill over. When I went to Marshall, Texas, our crime rate was really high. And throughout the 3 years that I was there, the first year I was there, we reduced crime by 20%. The next year we reduced crime by 3%. And this last year that I was there, we reduced crime by 2%. And the way we did it is through community-based policing. We gotta remember that we as police officers, we're called public servants for a reason. We're the servants of the public, we're the servants of the community. In order to have a successful police enforcement organization, the foundation is the community that we serve. They're the building blocks. So in order to build the structure, we have to have a strong foundation. If not, it'll erode and we won't have the trust of the community to be able to continue to build on that trust. So one of the most exciting things that I get really excited about and I get livid with is community-based policing. I love it. It's my forte. When I was with the Sheriff's Office, like I said, I was a school resource officer, I was a community policing officer, I was a DARE officer. As support services, I was in charge of community services. As the chief deputy, I oversaw community services. I was in charge of the anti-bullying coalition, which was something that I was tasked to put together. Went over to Marshall, Texas, put together, like I said, it was a very racially divided community. I was able to bridge the gap between the police department and the citizens by doing that, going out, being visible with the community, serving with the community. I took my family out to every function. We practically were, everybody knew who we were because we were very proactive. And, you know, we created new programs. We created the No Colors, No Labels program. I initiated an ice cream truck program. It was called the Cool Cops Ice Cream Truck. It was built through a partnership through public businesses and private
Thank
businesses.
you, Mr. Campa.
Thank you.
Ms. Herrera, same question. Socorro is the 19th safest city in Texas. What do you bring to the city to continue to keep us safe?
I'm very impressed that it's the 19th safest city. Obviously, the community cares about the city of Socorro. One thing that I would done in my career in various agencies, I'm a strong supporter of your Neighborhood Watch program. Neighborhood Watches are a very good program. It's citizens that live in neighborhoods that band together, and they're the eyes and ears of the police department. If they see something suspicious in their neighborhood, they're going to call the police. And they're going to look out for their neighbor. If the neighbor goes out on vacation, they all get together. They have little parties. I don't know if you all have a national night out here. It's a very good program. All the neighborhood watches get together, all the civic organizations and block associations. It's fantastic. So neighborhood watches, I would try to strengthen it and increase it and attend as many meetings as I can for neighborhood watch. Another thing I would do to gain the trust and foster community policing is I would establish a citizens advisory committee or board. And it's just a group of citizens from all across the city of Socorro. We will meet on a monthly basis, and whatever issues that are affecting their neighborhood, their community, they talk directly to the chief of police, and together we're gonna find ways to solve whatever issue is in their community, whether it be crime, whether it be code enforcement. We're gonna work together, the police department, through this advisory committee. Thirdly, Crime Stoppers, technology is another program. Instead of just responding to calls, we're gonna be proactive. I'm gonna make sure that during roll call briefings, we have crime analysis where the officers are aware of what crimes are occurring in their area, and we're gonna address that. We're gonna talk to our juvenile probation officers, our adult probation officers, our parole
Thank you
officers,
for your time, sir.
and make it a safe city, or even safer.
Mr. Rico, Socorro is in,
I'm impressed that Socorro is the 19th safest city with the fact that I think the police department has a shortage. I think they lack a lot of retention, and that's one of the things that I'd really like to work on. Possibly bringing maybe a retirement, or at least discussing it. I know there's a deferred compensation plan here, but we recently received TMRS in Horizon City, so it's something I'd like to at least take a look at, because I think increasing the police force and having some type of retention will allow us to put more officers out on the street and make it a safer community. I think continuing with the special forces that we have as far as Stone Guard and Border Star and other types of grants like that, that'll put extra officers out on the street. So that helps us protect our citizens a lot more. I would like to implement, along with the chain of command, a crime prevention officer who will work closer with the community, and we can discuss issues that the community might have as far as crime rate, any problems that they have. We can have meetings. I also believe in coffee with a cop. That way we can invite the community on a monthly basis in case they have any type of input or have any type of questions that we can assist them with. And a couple of different programs such as buoys at the park, things like that.
thank you. Please finish this phrase. A true leader, we're gonna start with candidate Campa.
A true leader motivates, leads by example. Do I have 2 minutes to expand on it? Or?
You have 2 minutes.
Okay. So a leader, like I said, leader motivates. My leadership style is that of a transitional coaching mentor style. I believe that that's the most important thing is to, you know, I remember when with the sheriff's office, or as you get in there or as you start moving up the ranks, people just promote you and say, here's a set of keys, here's a clipboard, go do your job. And you're like, there's really no, you know, structure as to how to get you to become a good leader. So I think the most important thing there is creating a succession plan, something that Rico mentioned, and it's what I did in Marshall, Texas. I created a really proactive succession plan, and I created a 5-year strategic plan. And what that 5-year strategic plan does is it helps establish where we're at, where we were, and where we're going. So one of the most important things I believe that a leader does is I believe in the Knights of the Round Table type of leadership. If you're not familiar with it, basically what it is, it offers a seat at the table for everybody. Everybody to sit down and provide some input. And that includes everybody from, you know, civilian personnel, sworn personnel. It includes people from the community, people from the city council and stuff like that. So we can actually come together, work as a team, and move ourselves forward. And I think that's the most important part about being a leader is that you got to remember that it's not an I thing, it's a we thing. And at times, you know, even when it does become an I thing, because sometimes as a leader, you're going to have to do things that may not be the most popular thing, but it's the right thing to do for the organization and for the majority of the people. So I think that when you have this type of leadership, like a Knights of the Round Table, where everybody's giving them their input, it gives you a sense of ownership because you're helping structure the future of the agency and the organization. And at the end, it was something that was put together by all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Herrera, please finish the phrase. A true leader.
A true leader is someone that has the abilities to coordinate the activities of people to accomplish a goal. But the cornerstone in my philosophy is leadership by example. And I learned that when I was in the military and throughout my law enforcement career. If the chief of police rose up on a traffic accident, just because he's the chief, he's going to get out of the car and direct traffic. That's all there is to it. You lead by example. I also believe that you foster an environment of teamwork. You cannot do it all by yourself. You got to talk to your lieutenant, you got to talk to your sergeants, and most importantly to your officers and dispatchers. And I believe in the theory of empowerment. When you give someone a job to do or an assignment, give them the authority to do the job. Nobody likes to work for a micromanager, so you give someone the job to do it, they're going to surprise you. So you foster teamwork, you respect your employees, you value your employees. General Schwarzkopf, who was a general of the first Gulf War under Bush Sr., said this: mission first, people always. You cannot do the job without people. You got to treat your people with respect. You got to recognize them when they do a good job. You praise in public, remand in private. And that's just the way it is. You set the example, you foster teamwork, and you get everybody to accomplish whatever goals that the city of Socorro has or the Socorro Police Department. And that's how you get the job done. You trust your employees, foster teamwork, foster empowerment, and work as a team. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Herrera. Mr. Rico, same question. Please finish the phrase. A true leader.
A true leader leads from the front, not the back. He leads his officers, and he leads by example. He also meets with his officers most often. One of the things I believe in is a true leader needs to know what's going on and get a lot of input from his officers, constantly holding meetings, constantly briefings, and I'm sorry, that's it.
Thank you. Other agencies are, oh, I'm sorry. I
quite all right.
apologize. Ms. Tammy. Same question, please. Finish the phrase. A true leader.
Well, I think a true leader is not only a leader in their respective employment, but they're a leader in the community. They're a leader day in and day out, and they're someone who consistently sets the example for others to follow. And a leader does not have to be at the top of an organization. A leader can be an entry-level officer. And we hope that we can inspire leadership from the ground up. One of my favorite sayings is, once you reach the top, always send the elevator back down, which means once you get there, you have to develop the people under you to also be leaders in their department, in their communities. I think leadership does mean leading from the front, setting that example. It means leading from the side, as in coaching our subordinates, coaching our peers, coaching whoever may need the coaching at that time to get up there and push them towards the front. And I do believe that leadership is also from behind, because sometimes people need a little extra push. They need a little extra education. They need a little extra motivation to be able to get out there and get the job done. Some people want to do the job, they just don't know how, and I think it's up to us as leaders to make sure that they have the tools and the resources necessary in order to get the job done to the best of their ability, so that we, as the leaders of organizations in this community, can reach out to our community and this is what we did, and this is what they did. I think public recognition, as well as a private pat on the back for a job well done. You know, leadership is a contact sport, and I will consistently say that. Leadership is a contact sport. You have to get out there, you have to be visible, and you have to communicate. Thank you.
Thank you. Other agencies are actively recruiting our officers. What will your plan be to retain our talent from leaving this organization, and what can you do to minimize this loss? We'll start with candidate Herrera.
My entire career, we've always lost good officers, good employees to other agencies that pay more. But sometimes when people leave, they come back because the grass is not always greener on the other side. One thing that I'm a firm believer in is employee recognition. I would establish an Officer of the Month, Officer of the Year program. When I was a chief in Uvalde, we partnered with one of the gun clubs in Uvalde. The Officer of the Year was recognized in a luncheon. He was awarded a brand new sidearm and was given a beautiful plaque. So Officer of the Month, and that's not only for officers, that's for dispatchers, anyone that does a good job in the police department, they're going to be recognized. And a little pat on the back goes a long way. It's a hard job that the police officers do, but we're all human and we all need some kind of recognition. That's one thing. I don't have the authority to give everyone a huge raise, but one of the things I would do is work with the city manager, and I've read the master plan of the city of Socorro, try to facilitate better work environment for the officers, obviously a bigger police station and more modern facilities. When you have that kind of, it raises the bar of professionalism. I would work towards getting the department accredited through the Texas Best Practices Program, which raises the bar of professionalism. Little things like that. I don't know what you have here in Socorro, but education pay might be a good thing. FTO pay, field training officer pay. A little financial incentives to keep the officers here that other departments take for granted, like in El Paso. So field training officer pay, education pay, peace officer pay for master peace officer and so forth. All these little incentives will be a motivational factor that the officers are valued and try to keep them here in the city of Socorro.
Thank you for your time. Candidate Campa, other agencies are actively recruiting our officers. What will your plan be to retain our talent from leaving this organization, and what can you do to minimize this loss?
Yes, sir. Through experience, with the sheriff's office, we realized that at one time we were losing a lot of candidates in our detention ranks, and we were losing a lot of candidates in our peace officer ranks due to the fact that other agencies offered a lot more money, especially federal agencies. When I took over the Marshall Police Department, we had a shortage of about 10 officers. We were probably one of the worst paid police agencies out in East Texas. And what we did is we came up with a very, like I said, we developed a 5-year strategy, a 5-year strategic plan that implemented certain changes that we wanted to see within the organization. Of course, in order to see those changes, there were things that we had to come to council with, talk to the city manager with, and work them out. And then the second thing we did is we created a succession plan, a succession and recruiting plan. And basically what we started doing is we started things that I was able to authorize, such as take-home vehicles. After I got permission from city council, that was one of the things we did. The officers wanted to go to a 12-hour shift. We went to a 12-hour shift. We started paying bilingual pay. We started doing these little incentives. We implemented the officer of the quarter, civilian of the quarter, dispatcher of the quarter, and eventually, of course, officer and dispatcher of the year and things like that. One of the things that I like to do is I like to cook out. So once a month we would cook out for the officers. We had these root beer floats days that I would, just make root beer floats for all the officers and stuff like that. And through our succession plan, we came up with a plan that also included recruiting. So we extended our reach. We were always just recruiting from Marshall and the 3 little neighboring cities. So what we did is we blew out the range to a 100-mile radius, and I put together a diverse recruiting team that went out and started going to all the colleges, the high schools, going to the technical colleges to start recruiting and selling people and telling them all the good things that we had. We couldn't promise them a lot of money because we didn't have it, but we could promise them a very long and rewarding career. And by the time I left, we were fully staffed.
Candidate Burr, other agencies are actively recruiting our officers. What will your plan be to retain our talent from leaving this organization, and what can you do to minimize this loss?
The public perception of policing is a problem not only in Socorro, not only in El Paso, but it's across the nation. And that's one of the issues that we have when it comes to recruiting and retaining officers. Number one, I think our officers need to feel appreciated by the public as well as by their own agency and by the city. And the way we do that is, like I said before, employee recognition, giving them a pat on the back, publicly recognizing them, you know, if that's what motivates them. Some officers don't want to be publicly recognized, and that's just their personality. So those are the kind you do it behind closed doors and give them the pat on the back for a job well done. I think one of the main things that we need to do in order to retain the talent that we have is to, you know, if somebody is just dead set on leaving, is to do an exit interview. Why are they leaving? I think we need to get to the root of the problem on why they want to leave our police department. Once we find that out, then we can work on correcting those issues. You know, incoming as a new chief of police, I would probably reach out to maybe some of the ones who have recently left, if they're willing to talk to me, to find out why they left. You know, and reach out to ones who are planning on leaving to find out why they want to leave the agency. I think it's important that we understand why, not just, you know, nobody came into policing to get rich. It's just not the job to be in. And we all understand that, having been in policing for several decades. But I think employee recognition as well as employee accountability. Our good officers are looking around the room going, well, she's getting away with something, and I want to know why. I think holding our employees accountable is just as important as employee recognition, because our other officers who are out there to do a good job every single day want to know that.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Candidate Rico, other agencies are actively recruiting our officers. What will your plan be to retain our talent from leaving this organization, and what can you do to minimize the loss?
I think it becomes very difficult when we have to compete with the federal departments. But I think a lot of what we can probably do with our officers for retention is have incentives. Have incentives like FTO pay, have incentives such as longevity pay. It's something we implemented in Horizon, and it's worked pretty well. FTO pay, longevity pay, education pay, shift differential type of pay. So it's something that's really working for us, and maybe even try to implement probably a better a retirement system we can try to look at. I think retirement, a defined retirement plan is something that our officers are always looking forward to, and once we've received it, it's something that we've been able to retain the officers that we currently have. We really got to start with the incentives, with the recognition to reward our officers who are doing good. I've even given comp time to an officer who was able to pass the PT test every quarter. It really starts with incentives and then probably the benefits.
Thank you. What would you say is the best course of action in your experience to address the failures to execute proper policy and procedure? We'll begin with candidate Campa.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question one more time, please?
What would you say is the best course of action in your experience to address the failure to execute proper policy and procedure?
Yes, sir. I think that the failure to properly implement procedure and policy falls on the chief. The chief is responsible for that. So I think that the best way to ensure that we implement the correct policy and follow the correct policy is by education and training. I think that training and education, a lot of the times we have this perception of, well, I thought the policy meant this. Well, I think it means this. Well, no. When you follow best practices, and that's one of the things that I would start working on immediately upon arrival, is to start adopting new policies, and those are best practices that have been recognized by the entire state of Texas. We did that in Marshall. We were with the Sheriff's Office, we were CALEA certified, so we always followed best practices. Now, that doesn't ensure that your subordinates are going to follow best practices. It doesn't ensure that your chief is going to follow best practices. However, it's all about leading by example. So it starts at the beginning, starts with the chief being ethical, and it's contagious. So if it starts at the top, it trickles down. But I think the best way to do that is to communicate the policy, train on the policy, get a buy-in from everybody. And the best thing about my style of leadership, the Knights of the Round Table, as I mentioned, is that we get input from everybody, and we're constantly and continuously talking to one another. And one incident doesn't create policy. You know, that's one of the things that I don't believe in creating a policy just because it happened one time. We address the issue, but I think that the most important thing to do is to educate, talk to our subordinates, constantly remind them that we are the public service figures, and the people are the ones that hold us to a higher level, and we should be ethical and follow everything and do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. So again, just communication, training, a well-trained officer who understands his policies and his procedures. As long as you give them enough room to work within the system, that officer is going to do things. And it all boils down to getting the officer to do the right thing, because you got to show him respect, you know. So it's all about treating others the way you want to be treated, and they'll do what you need them to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Herrera, what would you say is the best course of action in your experience to address the failures to execute proper policy and procedure?
I believe it starts with the chief of police. You have to have an organization that is not only accountable to the public, but to our own selves. How do you do that? You have policies and procedures and so forth. You do that with training. The officers have to be well trained. The better trained officer, the less liability it's going to bring to that officer or to the department or to the city. You have to have the support of your supervisors. That is a critical point. If you have good supervisors, they're the ones that are out there enforcing policies and procedures. You have to have a mechanism in place where if someone doesn't comply to a policy and procedure, there's a mechanism in place to address that in terms of discipline, different types of discipline, but you have to be fair with discipline. You cannot be harsh, you have to be fair. A lot of agencies use the matrix system. It's a progressive disciplinary system. If you do this, you get a reprimand. If you do this and this and this. So that's one thing that I don't know if your department has, but it can be looked at. So you deal with proper training, proper oversight from your supervisors, and lead from the front. Another thing that you can do is once in a while, call a citizen. Hey, Mrs. Hawkins, Officer so-and-so was here and did a burglary report. How did he do? Oh, you know, he did good or he did bad. And they're not spying on the guys. They just want to get some feedback from the community on how they're doing their job. So you hold people accountable, but treat them fairly also.
Thank you. Candidate Rico, what would you say is the best course of action in your experience to address the failures to execute proper policy and procedure?
I think training is very important, but I think that in this type of environment, it's really difficult to get all the officers properly trained or consistently trained. So you got to find methods of being able to get them trained well and to retain the information, because if not, then they're going to wind up violating policies that they forgot about. And one way that we've implemented in training the officers, we train them per shift instead of trying to bring them in and paying the overtime to have to bring them in, bring them off their shift. So they're tired, they're not really paying attention. So we're constantly training through the internet. We have a system that we implemented that'll allow them to do it during shift. That way they're consistent and they're fresh in knowing the policies and procedures. Also, what this system does is once you finish your training, you sign the document so you're aware of what you had just learned. So that way, if there is a policy that's violated, it's brought up and the discipline is administered. But it is always progressive discipline. You have to be consistent in disciplining your officers. If one did one thing and the other officer did the same thing, you have to be consistent with them. But I truly believe that it comes to educating them and consistently training them on policies and procedures. We just got our best business practices. We have 178 policies that we have. So we're consistently and constantly training the officers in order for them to retain the information. And That way they won't feel as if there's a policy that they forgot or don't remember or was never told about. So you just have to be consistent with the training.
Thank you. Candidate Byrne, same question. What would you say is the best course of action in your experience to address the failures to execute proper policy and procedure?
I believe the best course of action in a situation such as this is to be fair but firm. I think first of all we need to make sure that they are aware of the policies, that they were trained correctly, whatever the case may be. If they willfully violated a policy and procedure, then we need to act on that. And I think the best way to do that is to understand the circumstances from which they failed to properly execute the policy or procedure. Discipline needs to start as a corrective action. Not every action by an officer or employee is intentional. I think we need to determine whether it was intentional or unintentional violation of the policy and procedure. And then I think we need to progress from there. If it was so bad that we need to enforce discipline upon them, then that's what we need to do. But as my partner said, we need to be fair but firm, and we need to be consistent. We need to hold people accountable when they do violate the policy and procedure. But again, I think we also need to look at circumstance. We also need to go back before that and make sure that they were properly trained and make sure everything took place up until that point, and to make sure that they were aware of the policy, and to also, find out why. I think it's important that we talk to our people to find out why you did this, what were the circumstances, and use the discipline initially as corrective action. And if someone continues to violate policy and procedure, then obviously we take that progressive disciplinary action up to and including termination from the department.
Thank you. One of the highest priorities in the city entails emergency management. What experiences and skills do you bring to the city in terms of emergency management? We're going to start with candidate Herrera.
Emergency management is a very important task for any community. It's responding to natural disasters, critical incidents of that nature. My background in emergency management, I've been formally trained through the National Incident Management System, acronyming NIMS. I was an instructor for the Incident Command System in El Paso. I worked with the Emergency Management Coordinator on a regular basis for the city of Uvalde, Texas. Emergency management has different phases. You want to mitigate the risk. I'll give you an example. If you know that there's a tornado coming, you want to already have, or a flood or a disaster, you already want to have emergency management plans in place. Usually it's the management coordinator of the county that takes care of that. I understand you have someone here on staff that does that as well. But you have to have emergency management plans in place that addresses incidents like railroad disasters where there's a chemical leak, an explosion, a tornado, a flood. What plans do you have in place? And what are your critical infrastructure of the city of Socorro? Where is your electric company booster station? Where is your water supply coming from? You have to have all these things, plans in place, and be proactive when it comes to emergency management. One little incident is going to strip the resources of this town in minutes. If you have a chemical spill, the city of Socorro is going to need outside agencies to assist. DPS, Sheriff's Office, FEMA, if it's a big disaster. So you have to be well trained through NIMS and Incident Command. It's a standard language that we follow the country. I'm a former instructor in that, and I have experience in that field.
Thank you. Candidate Campa, one of the highest priorities in the city entails emergency management. What experiences and skills do you bring involving emergency management.
Yes, sir. I've had the pleasure of serving as a Deputy Assistant Emergency Management Coordinator for the City of Marshall. One of my duties, on top of that being the Chief of Police, was serving as the Deputy Emergency Management Coordinator. And when you go to Marshall, Texas, and East Texas, you start dealing with things that you don't normally deal with in El Paso, such as these things called tornadoes, which I was there about 2 weeks when I experienced my first tornado, and that was not a lot of fun. So the fact that we already had a plan, we follow the NIMS system. I am completely certified in NIMS. I have all my certifications as well as my FEMA certifications. So I've got experience in natural disasters such as tornadoes, flash floods, lightning storms, ice storms. When I was in El Paso, serving with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office, I was assigned as one of the Deputy Emergency Management Coordinators as well, working hand in hand with the El Paso Fire Department, who oversees the emergency management for the city and county of El Paso. So I've got a lot of experience in dealing with emergency management, actually hands-on, being on the field. As I said, hopefully we won't experience a tornado here, and I won't ever have to use that, but I have a lot of experience in dealing with flash floods. The floods of 2006, I was part of the reception team that housed a lot of the Katrina victims, so we were assigned to dealing with them. So I think that the experience that I have is the fact that I've actually served as a Deputy Emergency Management Coordinator. I also have experience in dealing with large events, which a lot of people don't realize that when you have a large event, such as like the event that's coming up here at Cougar Park, I believe it's Cougar Park on the 4th of July, that's actually a great time to deploy your incident command situation, because you know it's a big event, a lot of people, and a lot of things could go wrong. So by pre-planning and having all these plans in place, you make sure that you provide a safe environment for everybody. So along with that, emergency management is very high, very important, especially in the city of Socorro, where we have a lot of flooding.
Thank you for your
Thank you.
response. We're going to go ahead and excuse Candidate Herrera for a break. Candidate Burr. Candidate Burr. One of the highest priorities in the city entails emergency management. What emergency management experience and skills do you bring?
First of all, I am fully trained in FEMA, Incident Command, and the National Incident Management System. During my tenure at the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, I had the unfortunate opportunity to have to employ those skills on numerous occasions. I believe the first one was with a derailed train with a chemical leak, which killed several people in our community. Lasted several days. I've also been involved in the Hurricane Katrina and Hurricane Rita evacuation, where we set up housing at one of our local bases to accept those persons coming from areas that were affected by the hurricanes. Plane crashes, numerous other incidents in Bexar County, in San Antonio, again, during my time with the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. It was very much a learning opportunity for me. You know, being involved in those teaches you a lot of things. The most important thing that I learned from all of that is to make sure that you get out in front of it, that you are trained prior to those events happening, that you ensure that all of your people are trained prior to those events occurring. You know, one of the things we employed immediately after we realized the importance of it was we ensured everyone in the Bexar County Sheriff's Office was trained on incident command, on the FEMA, up to their level of which they should have been trained. And I think that was of utmost importance in our success on future events. So I believe it's important to work together. You work with the fire department, you work with your other local agencies, You ensure that everyone's on the same page so that when those events happen, you can go directly to work and you're not trying to scramble to figure out who's doing what.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Candidate Rico, one of the highest priorities in the city entails emergency management. What emergency management experience and skills do you bring?
This is really minimal for me. I'm from Horizon City, been there 22 years. So we don't really have too much training and natural disasters that we would have to assist on. But we do continue to train in how to try to handle them. But it's very minimal, and since I'm the assistant chief, I'm kind of take from behind him. So it's really difficult for me to really give you too much experience on exactly that.
Thank you. In Socorro, we believe in a transparent and just administration where the public is engaged and informed. What efforts do you use to raise community involvement from a police perspective? We'll begin with candidate Burr.
I believe, you know, like I said before, the foundation of community policing, that's number one, in getting the community involved with the police. We want to establish a level of trust, not only within the police department, but outside the police department. We want the city of Socorro to trust the police department. I think that would be a number one priority. What can we do to accomplish that? I think being transparent is the number one thing we can do. We want to get out in front of any situation. We want to ensure that our public, our community is informed about situations, and if they can possibly be involved to help us, to assist us in engaging in that situation and trying to make it better, in educating, then we want to employ what they have to offer as well. You know, it's not the police department against the community, it's the police department and the community working together as one, and you have total transparency when you do something like that because everybody knows what's going on with each other. And I think that's the most important thing we can do is be transparent and have the courage to just stand up and do what's right.
Thank you. Candidate Campa. In Socorro, we believe in a transparent and just administration where our public is engaged and informed. What efforts do you use to raise community involvement from a police perspective?
Yes, sir. Transparency is very important to a successful law enforcement organization. As I mentioned earlier, your community is your foundation for a successful police department. And that's where the transparency begins. As I mentioned earlier, you gotta have this relationship with your community and be transparent with them first and foremost. And the way you do that is by communicating constantly with them, meeting with them on a regular basis, attending all the city function events, along with your family, which is a very key important thing about being transparent, as well as having a working relationship with the media. The media plays a vital role in your role of transparency. So as long as you've got the community on your side, and the way you get your community on your side is by providing real, actual community-based policing, by having procedural type of justice, making sure that each officer is trained in transparency and we have nothing to hide. I believe that being transparent is the best way to stay out of trouble. You put it out all in the front. The best way to do that is through active social media. Right now, social media is the key. So we constantly have to update our social media, let people know what's going on as much as we legally possibly can. I think holding people accountable, not only your officers, but holding yourself accountable helps in the role of transparency. So those are the things that I would do is I would constantly have communication with my citizens, the citizens that I serve, have an open relationship, open door policy with my officers. I would have an open door policy with the media as well. And just basically anytime something wrong happens, you gotta address it immediately. You gotta get out in front of the cameras, in front of the community, out in your social media. That way there's no preconceived notion that you're trying to hide something or anything like that. You gotta admit when you're wrong. You admit when you're wrong. You make a mistake, you own it. You know, you gotta go out there and you gotta let the community know that you're gonna do better for the next time. Hopefully there won't be a next time. But just communication and open dialogue and having a strong relationship with your community, so that will help the smooth transition of transparency taking place, so it doesn't appear that we're trying to hide anything. So constant communication.
Thank you for your answer. Candidate Herrera. In Socorro, we believe in a transparent and just administration where the public is engaged and informed. What efforts do you use to raise community involvement from a police perspective?
The legitimacy of the police department depends on the support of the community. Absolutely, 100%. The chief is the one that is, I guess, the face of the department. Any incidents that appear to have a blemish on the department, the chief of police has to immediately address the community, either through a press conference, through Facebook. You have to address the community and advise the community that this incident occurred and it's under investigation. If it's a high-profile incident, once the investigation is over, and you can release whatever information by law that you can to the community, according to the Texas Open Records Act. And furthermore, you have to have establish a trust, a bond of trust with the community. Attending as many community meetings as you can, neighborhood watches, have a citizens advisory group where you meet with the citizens on a regular basis, have coffee with the chief, an open door policy, have an event where the officers meet at a local restaurant and invite the public to meet the officers, just to have coffee and have the public talk to the officers and get to know them. It's just not a police car driving down the street. That's Officer so-and-so. You know who the officer is in your neighborhood. So it's very important to establish that trust with the community. The chief sets the tone. Anything that comes up, you have to address it immediately. Transparent is a key word, but what you can, you tell the community that you're addressing it, and once you get all the facts, you tell the community what's being done. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Rico. In Socorro, we believe in a transparent and just administration where the public is engaged and informed. What efforts do you use to raise community involvement from a police perspective?
I think it begins with an open door policy where citizens can come in anytime they want and they don't feel threatened that they're going to wind up being retaliated by an officer for either a concern that they might have or a complaint. And when there is a complaint, swiftly handle that complaint and keep your citizens informed as what you're doing and what your outcome is. I think having special programs is another way to reach out to the community, that we're more there for them versus just trying to give them citations or trying to arrest them. Be more proactive than reactive. Such programs such as Citizens Police Academy, such programs as implementing your Explorer program if you don't have it here. That Explorer program works pretty well because these kids that are in the community, they'll talk to their friends and their friends will talk to their parents. So then at that point they start trusting the police and they're not afraid to come visit or meet with you. Other programs would be such as Coffee with a Cop, Coffee with the Chief, different little programs to try to implement, get with the officers to see what they think programs would work, what's on their mind. Everybody has ideas, so we can work together and come up with better ideas to better inform the community. Social media is great. I just believe that it depends on the type of situation. It might be an isolated situation, or it might be something that needs to be addressed immediately or can wait till the investigation, but keep people informed. As long as people aren't afraid to come talk to you, I think it'll make a better community.
Thank you. The Chief of Police is a very time-consuming position. How would you make time for your officers, and how would you create team building and career development opportunities for them? We'll start with candidate Rico.
The way you start is constant communication with your officers. Just because you're the chief of police doesn't change who you are. You're still a police officer. For example, responding to calls. Make sure you carry your radio and you listen to what's going on. You hear a panic alarm go off and you're not doing too much, respond with the officers. Meet at their meetings, at their shift changes. If you have to go to all three to be able to see all the officers, do that. Be informed, ask questions, make them feel confident that they can come to you and discuss certain situations and don't feel threatened for any type of retaliation as well. Team building, have events, have barbecues at the park, as well as with citizens. That way the community feels like they're one.
Thank you. Candidate Herrera, the chief of police is a very time-consuming position. How would you make time for your officers, and how would you create team building and career development opportunities with them?
First of all, I want to thank the military servicemen, and thank you for your service, sir. Secondly, time management is very important. You have to make time for your officers. You have to make time for your staff. In responding to calls with, as my other candidate stated, very important that you establish time and establish team building. As far as team building, you do that through training. You have your officers have a shift training day, and you do training all together. It establishes teamwork when they train together. You take them to the El Paso Community College or one of the other academies, and you have a range of shooting day, tactical training day, and you depend on each other through proper training. It establishes camaraderie. It establishes a bond of trust between the officers by proper training together. Just because you're the chief, you're going to be out there doing the things that the officers do and lead by example. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Campa, the chief of police is a very time-consuming position. How would you make time for your officers? How would you create team building and career development opportunities with them?
Yes, sir. One of the things that I've always done is I've always believed in an open door policy. I've been criticized for it in the past for having an open door policy. Just because I am the chief, I'm still one of you guys. I still bleed blue. I wear a badge, I carry a gun, and it's my job, just like it is yours, to protect our community. So I always have an open door policy. Okay, as far as team building goes, as I mentioned earlier, the strategic planning committees that we would formulate, that everybody had a seat at the table. Anybody that had an idea, anybody that wanted to talk was more than welcome to come to those meetings. You didn't need an invitation. We had an open door policy. So it bonded us together because a lot of the officers would come together and we would talk about the plans and the ideas, and we would vote on them, and you know, we'd have a lot of interaction. And it built a lot of camaraderie. And one of the things that I've also been criticized for in the past is I like going out on patrol. I like going out on the field with the officers. Of course, the officers, the last thing they want is their chief driving around with them out at night or in the evening or in the afternoon, morning, whatever. But once you're a cop, that's what you are. And the officers knew that I always had their backs. I was out there with them. You know, people would always tell me, act like a chief, act like a, I'm like, what do you mean act like a chief? You know, I am acting like a chief. It's my job to be out there with my men and women out there protecting our community. And so that's one of the ways, several of the ways that I would do it. As I mentioned earlier, in order to show my subordinates and my officers that I have a vested interest in them, I created that succession plan. During that succession plan, we basically, what we do is we take everybody, I have a one-on-one with everyone. I talk to them about their dreams and their ambitions, and we plan out their career path. You know, I'm not going to be sending you to training when, you know, if you want to be a homicide detective, I'm not going to be sending you to accident investigation training and sending you to all these trainings that aren't going to help you. I want to help you live your dream by making you that, you know, by showing you that I'm going to send you to the proper training that you need to live out your dreams. I've had people tell me, I want your job. I said, okay, fine, let's send you to leadership schools. Let's do this, let's do that. Let's send you here. Let's get you ready for the day it happens. So that's the way you build, you know, team, you know. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Burr, the chief of police is a very time-consuming position. How would you make time for your officers, and how would you create team building or career development opportunities with them?
And I'm sure the chief of police is a very time-consuming position, but I think it's important that our officers know that the chief of police is there for them, that they can trust their chief of police, and that the chief knows that they can trust them. I think it's important, like I said before, leadership is a contact sport. As a leader in this organization, it is on my shoulders to get out there and be amongst the officers and the community. It is imperative that I do that so that they know that, number one, I have their back. Number two, I'm not afraid to do anything that I would tell them to do. So I want to be the one setting the example. I want to be the one out there leading the pack, going, you do it, but we'll go do it together, because I don't need to send you out to do anything that I'm not willing to do myself. You know, team building, there's a number of things that we can do. You know, like previously said, there's barbecues, there's a lot of things, you know, that you can invite your officers to, you know, so they can have some downtime and have a little bit of fun and let their hair down a little bit. But I think it's also important that the community is involved in that, and that we all do it together, because it's not just the chief of police showing support for the officers, it's the entire community. I think, you know, as far as professional development, there's nothing more important than developing those that are coming up in the department. That is a #1 priority for me, and it always has been. I think, you know, I'm a police instructor. If it comes down to it, then I will teach the courses that I can to help develop them as future leaders of this department.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Based on what you have seen from your visit, how would you describe the city of Socorro in one word? Candidate Herrera, we'll start with you.
Progressive.
Same question for candidate Campa. Based on what you have seen from your visit, how would you describe the city of Socorro in one word?
Impressed.
Candidate Burr, based on your visit, how would you describe the city of Socorro in one word?
Growing.
Candidate Rico, based on what you have seen from your visit, how would you describe the city of Socorro in one word?
Promising.
What do you feel are the 3 most important qualities to possess for success as a chief of police? We're going to start with candidate Herrera.
Can you repeat the question, please?
What do you feel are the 3 most important qualities to possess for success as a chief of police?
#1, you have to be empathetic. You have to put yourself in the other person's shoes when it comes to discipline and so forth. As a person, as a human being, you have to be empathetic to that other person. We're all human. Another one that I would say would be patience. You have to have patience. You have to be cool under fire, not show your emotion, and just be patient and cool as chief of police, empathetic. Thirdly, I believe you have to be charismatic. You have to be out there and assertively having a good personality, a good attitude with the public, with fellow department heads, with city staff. You have to be, have a charismatic personality. So charisma, charismatic, empathy, and patience. 3 of many more, but I touched on those 3.
Thank you. Candidate Rico, what do you feel are the 3 most important qualities to possess for success as chief of police?
Honesty. Any law enforcement needs to at least be honest. So if officers believe you're being honest with them, and so do the public, I think that goes a long way. Another one is reliable. Your citizens and your officers need to know that you're going to be there for them when they need you, as well as the citizens. And trustworthy. Your officers and your peers and your citizens need to trust in you, know that you're gonna have their back and they're gonna have yours.
Thank you. Candidate Burr, what do you feel are the 3 most important qualities to possess for success as a chief of police?
Integrity, courage, and servant leadership. You have to have the integrity to build trust both inside and outside your organization, with the community, and within the police department. You have to have courage to stand up and do what's right, no matter what situation you're faced with. And you have to have servant leadership to remember who you work for. You always work for your community.
Thank you. Candidate Campa, what do you feel are the 3 most important qualities to possess for success as chief of police?
Well, I have to say that the first one is integrity. Integrity is held at different levels. I mean, we talk about integrity goes along the lines with accountability. So I think that if you're going to hold, before you hold anybody else accountable, you have to hold yourself accountable. So if you expect a certain behavior from your subordinates and the people that you serve, you need to be that visual point that is the person who's being held accountable, your integrity. The second thing is, I would have to say, is transparency. Okay, transparency comes in many ways, many shapes, many forms, but having an open dialogue and being as transparent as possible. Now, there's going to be times where you're going to do things that you can't be fully transparent because it might affect operations. But at the time that you complete that issue, the most important thing is to be transparent about it and talk about it openly. So integrity, transparency, excuse me, and understanding empathetic, which would be the same thing. You got to understand that, as I mentioned in my interview yesterday, one of the things that's the hardest thing for me to do is having to discipline officers, not because it's a hard thing to do, but because you basically are making me hold you accountable for your actions. And one of the things that people always talk about is they want to be held accountable until it's time to hold them accountable. You know, people will always say, I want to be held accountable, I want to be held accountable, but what I meant is I meant you to hold her accountable, not me accountable. So one of the things that goes along that line is that, when you have to discipline an individual, you have to put yourself and be empathetic in their shoes as well. So I believe in the matrix system. I also believe in following a transparent matrix system, because even with a matrix system, you can still have disparity of treatment. So I believe that as long as you are transparent, empathetic, and have integrity, you'll be very successful.
Thank you for your time. Cities across the country are struggling to keep the public's trust. What do you believe is the best way to earn and keep the public's trust? Candidate Campa, we'll start with you.
Okay, sir, I am sorry. Can you repeat that question one more time?
Cities across the country are struggling to keep the public's trust. What do you believe is the best way to earn and keep the public's trust?
The best way to keep the public's trust is to lead by example. You have to have a commitment from the leadership at the top, and when I mean a commitment from the leadership at the top, building trust is not just the job of the police department, it's the job of the entire city. So I have to have, in order for community-based policing to actually work, to have procedural justice actually work, I have to have the support from the city manager, all the way down to the commission, all the way down to my officers, all the way down to my citizens. And the way I build that trust, and one of the ways that I would build that trust, is by implementing procedural justice. And one of the things about procedural justice, is that it's a new form of community-based policing. Okay, it's based on 4 pillars, and those pillars are respect, neutrality, understanding, and voice. And basically what that means is that we're going to treat the community the same way we expect to be treated. And research has shown that people, regardless of how bad the situation may be, will understand as long as you show them respect. As long as you treat them the way you want to be treated, they're going to show you respect. Now, don't get me wrong, there's always going to be a time or two where you don't want to treat people the way they're treating you, because that's going to be a little bit out of line. But so that's the way I would build trust, is by being, I have a reputation of being proactive. I walk the talk when it comes to community-based policing. I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty. any community-based policing program that I've ever initiated or started or created, I have always been at the forefront, because a lot of the times traditional law enforcement officers, we don't like change. We believe in traditional law enforcement policing. We have a hard time accepting the kinder, gentler, community-based policing. Fortunately or unfortunately, times, the political climate, our social engagement, that's what it requires to be successful at this time. So we have to learn to adapt and overcome by adapting to those situations and implementing community-based policing, accepting the procedural justice. And I think that the community, by being out there with them, showing the officers how to treat them, is how we're going to do it.
Thank you for your answer. Candidate Herrera. Cities across the country are struggling to keep the public's trust. What do you believe is the best way to earn and keep the public's trust?
It all excuse me, it all boils down to transparency. What you can tell the public, you have to address their concerns in a timely fashion. Citizen complaints. When you get a citizen complaint, you address those complaints in a timely manner. You investigate them thoroughly. You get all the facts. You get back with a citizen. If the officer was doing his job, you tell that citizen the officer was doing his job. If the officer did something wrong, well, you also advise, you take the corrective action on that employee. So addressing citizen complaints in a timely manner and thoroughly getting all the facts. In addition to that, you have to establish trust by attending and establishing, there's so many community policing programs, neighborhood watches, apartment watches, Crime Stoppers. I can go on and on with community type police programs, National Night Out. You have to get the community involved. That way they will establish a trust with their police department, with their officers and their chief. But main thing is when you say something, you do it and follow up with it and just be transparent. And what you can tell the public by law, tell them. We're not hiding nothing. Tell them.
Thank you. Candidate Rico. Cities across the country are struggling to keep the public's trust. What do you believe is the best way to earn and keep the public's trust?
I think it starts with holding officers accountable. I think in investigating complaints from citizens, if it's legitimate communication with the citizens to let them know where you're at on the status of the complaint, but then it's not just the complaint, but I think officers tend to learn. I strongly believe, I think a lot of the loss of the trust that we've had is because of the social media, because of what they've caught in recording, and they don't record the entire incident. And I believe in the body camera system, have supervisors monitor their officers' actions daily and make sure that they hold them accountable and make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. Because I think the camera system even assists in helping train the officers to know what they're supposed to do, and if they don't do it, they're gonna be held accountable. The way I've done it in the past is if I have some free time, I'll monitor the videos myself, and if I find anything that the supervisor didn't catch, I'm gonna address it with the supervisor and then deal with them. But it also comes down to it also comes down with communication with the community. The community needs to not feel like you're against them. It's the police against the community. The community needs to know and be informed with almost everything that's going on with the police department if we're allowed to. Transparency is extremely important, and the open door policy for the citizens to be able to come in and talk to you. Even if it's not a complaint, maybe it's even giving the officers acknowledgement, but it comes down to communication with the community.
Thank you. Candidate Burr. Cities across the country are struggling to keep the public's trust. What do you believe is the best way to earn and keep the public's trust?
I think the best way to earn and keep the public's trust is through transparency and continual communication with the community. Transparency, we have to get out, as a police chief, I believe it's my job to get out in front of an event that has happened or that the public perceives to have happened. And I think it's important to educate the public on what actually did happen. Tell them the truth as far as what we can about whatever event it was. And I think, you know, if there was a complaint or anything that was lodged from the community, I don't think we go, okay, well, we'll handle it and don't tell you anything else. I think it's important to go back to the public and go, we handled it, this is how we handled it, this is what we found out. And again, just be transparent about it. You know, be clear and concise. This is what really happened as far as our investigation revealed, and ensure that, you know, that we've established that trust with the community, so that as a police chief, when I go tell you this is what happened, that you believe what I'm telling you is the truth. I think that's the most important thing we can do. You know, educating our community on police practices, having a civilian advisory board to help us review those complaints if they get to that level. I think all of those things are important, having the community involved, being transparent, and continually communicating with the community about what's going on in the department and any incidents or anything that has happened.
Thank you for your answer. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, those are all of the city's questions. However, we will leave the remaining time open for the public to ask questions of their own. We do ask that you ask your question at the podium and do speak into the microphone. If I can get Univision and Telemundo to just move your cameras a little bit, that way we can give the public some room, I'd be grateful. Correct. The time limit of 2 minutes will still stand for each candidate, and each candidate will be required to ask the community's question.
Preguntas por nosotros, nada.
Si alguien tiene unas preguntas para cualquier de las personas aquí que están listos y aplicando para la posición del jefe de policía, ahorita es el tiempo. City employees may also ask any questions as well.
First of all, I want to thank you. I also want to thank the people that weren't here as well. My question is, the city of Socorro residents believe that we always have something to hide. You know, I've heard a lot of coffee and meeting with them and stuff like that, and open door policies. That is all great, but to implement, would you guys really want to change the atmosphere here in Socorro? We have great police officers that are always tainted because there's a lot of, how would I say, a lot of naysayers that don't trust the city, because we've been tainted for many years. There's been a lot of corruption and stuff like that. I like what all of you have said, you know, integrity, honesty, you know, and all of that. But for each of you, you know, for a peace of mind, is our officers need to, would you defend our officers? Would you uphold the law? And above all, we need policies and procedures that will not only protect the city, but our residents as well. What would you guys do?
Okay, so we're gonna start that question.
Oh, I know it was a lot, sorry.
We're gonna start that question with candidate Rico. Do you need him to repeat the question?
No, I think I caught most of it. Just a little bit of my history. Being from San Antonio, working in Horizon City PD for 22 years. My family grew up in Socorro. My kids went to Socorro High School. My daughter actually goes to Americas only because she's in the early college, but they live right down the street. I've worked with, back in patrol, I used to work with the officers from Socorro. Most of them have left already. I come from a small agency. I have a lot of experience. A lot of it might have not come out tonight, but Socorro has a piece of my heart because I have family here. being in a smaller department, there's a lot of different things you need to do, from budget, from management to IAs. I handle the IA cases for Horizon City PD. Nothing but fair. Now that we have the camera system, my job's become a lot easier. The officers know what they're supposed to do. We have new policies and procedures that we've implemented. Because of those policies, it's written exactly what you're supposed to do. So if you stray from that, you're gonna be held accountable. Any complaint that comes in actually comes to me. I have to respond within a day. So people feel good that you're taking care of their situation. Sometimes I hate having to tell people that in a sense they're right, but they're right. And you have to let them know, because you're holding your officers accountable. Whether it be basic discipline or major discipline up to a suspension for progressive discipline, it's gonna be, again, I know transparency keeps coming in the picture, but it's exactly what it is. As long as you're able to communicate with the community and try to rebuild on the reputation, it's there. And I can see it. I was actually impressed, because I come from down the street and there's a lot of things I didn't know Socorro was about. It's a rebuilding city, it's a rebuilding department, but I think it has an extremely lot of promise. So I would love to be able to be in this community and help make it grow.
Thank you. Candidate Herrera, do you need the question repeated?
I appreciate that comment you made, sir, as far as saying that you have a lot of good officers in the department, and I'm sure there's a lot of good officers in this department. And I'm going to say this just for the record. If I get this job, I will not bend to political pressure. If an officer is doing his job, I will defend that officer 110%. I will not bend to political pressure or to social pressure. If the officer did his job correctly and just doing his job, I'm going to defend that officer. In addition to that, you know, we all said all kinds of things tonight: accountability, transparency, and I would just build upon that. I will work closely with the city manager and other department heads. And what are the goals of the city of Socorro? I know they have a master plan. I would like to raise the bar. I've always believed to go to the next level of professional development. You don't become stagnant. You always go to that next level, the next level. You never stop. So I believe in leadership by example. And I will, on the flip side, if an officer does commit an act of malfeasance where he knew something was wrong and he went ahead and did it, of course that officer is going to be held accountable. Of course, absolutely. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Candidate Campa, do you need the question repeated?
No, I think I got it. Sir, to answer your question, I never knew that you could get in trouble for doing the right thing. I have a reputation of getting myself in trouble for being transparent. I have a reputation of getting myself in trouble for always doing what I think is the right thing, okay? You asked the question about the officers, and I said, when I first got here, I said I was very impressed with the city of Socorro. And I've told these gentlemen, and I've told several people, that one of the things that I was very impressed with was yesterday during the tour, to see the proactive, positive things that you are providing for your citizens, your community. I met with some of the officers, I talked with some of the officers, and I don't understand the preconceived notion that people have of Socorro. I get it and I understand it, but that's history. We can't live in history. We got to move forward. See, I'm a transitional type of leader. I believe in progressiveness. We move forward. We learn from our mistakes. We don't look back. We keep moving forward. Now, the problem that I've always had, sir, and the reason I get myself into a lot of trouble is because I don't follow the status quo. I don't believe in the good old boy system, okay? I do what's right because it's the right thing to do. I won't bend the law. I don't bend under political pressure, sir, okay? I will always stand for my officers. I will go to bat for them 100% if they're in the right. If they followed policy and procedure, if they did everything right, I will not bend to political pressure for those officers. You know, they did their job, and that's what it is. And I'll take the heat for it. I've taken the heat for it. You know, I have. I can guarantee you that. I believe in accountability. But the question is, if you heard me earlier ask it, is people always want to be held accountable until it's time to hold that person accountable. So I in turn, if I may ask a question, is I'd like to know, is the city of Socorro ready to be held accountable? Is the police department ready to be held accountable? Because I will hold you accountable, but at the same token, sir, I hold myself accountable. I will not ask you to do, I will not ask the officer to do anything that I won't
Thank
do
you for your
myself.
answer. Candidate Burr, would you like the question repeated?
No, sir, I'm fine, thank you. To answer your question, sir, I am absolutely 100% committed to coming to Socorro to change the face of this department. I've done my research on things that have happened here in the past, but like my counterpart, we don't live in the past, we move forward. I've met some of the men and women of the department, and they appear to be outstanding individuals. And if I am selected for this position, my #1 priority is to let them know what my non-negotiable is, and that's honesty. You're honest with me, then we can work together. But that's my #1 non-negotiable with the community as well. And I think that's important because, you know, this department has a reputation, the city has a reputation. We don't need to you know, stay with that. We need to move forward. We need to move into the positive. We need to change the face of this department. Like I said, you have great men and women, the acting chief, the acting lieutenant, great. I mean, we had the opportunity to talk, and I mean, great things are happening in Socorro. Great things are happening with the police department. You have great men and women. Will I hold them accountable? Absolutely, if they've done something wrong. If they are in the right, I will have their back 110%.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, candidates. This question is regarding our history. Obviously, there've been a lot of negative history in the past. I would say maybe 10 years and beyond, that the citizens still think of us today. However, in the past 5 to 6 years, we've transformed this department going forward into a very good department where now other agencies are recruiting directly from us. We have task forces with other agencies. So my question to you guys is, working with the city, what is your plan to market our department to the citizens who don't know what we're doing today and haven't known for the past 6 years? So what ideas can you bring to the table to market the department going forward?
We'll go ahead and start with candidate Herrera.
I think it's very important to promote the department. That's one of the chief's main functions, is to promote the department to the community. There's all kinds of programs you can implement to do that, but you got to hit the trenches. The chief has to go to the community meetings. He's got to go to the civic groups, the Lions Club, all these civic groups in the community, and promote the department and be proud of his department. Hey, I got a really good police department, and I'm proud of them. This is what we did, you know, and give them factual data. Officer so-and-so, he just arrested a burglar in the act of breaking into someone's house. Commend that officer to the public. You know, commend them. Let the public know of the good job that they're doing. Officer so-and-so rescued a lady from a burning house. Whatever it may be, you need to promote the department through the media, in person, through social interaction, through social media, and through the formal media, television, radio, and so forth. You have to promote the department, and the chief has to do that 110%. That's it. You have to promote it.
Thank you. Candidate Campa, same question. Would you like it repeated?
No, I think I've got it, sir. Chief, to answer your question, what would I do? I can just tell you that everything that I came from a community where I just had to do that. Okay, that's what I was hired to do, was to change the perception that the people had of the police department, and I did it, sir. The community loved the police department the 3 years that I was there. We changed it, and a lot of it had to do with racial tension and racial issues, but I've got the experience in doing it. One of the things, sir, that gets me in a lot of trouble all the time is that I over-promote my department. I'm very proud of the organizations that I lead, and I go out there and I'm the face and the voice of the department. But just because I'm the face and the voice doesn't mean I don't include you, the sergeants, the lieutenants, and the officers. We all come along. And sometimes I have to bring you guys along screaming and yelling because a lot of times, as you know, Chief, police officers don't like change. And policing has changed. It's no longer the traditional law enforcement type of policing that we grew up in. It's now more community-based, procedural justice type of procedure. So the thing that I would do, Chief, and I don't want to scare any of the officers here because I've got this great idea already. I saw that Hummer out there, and you know, in Marshall, I created the Cool Cops ice cream truck for the kids, and we built a great relationship. I would really like to turn that into, you know, be able to use that vehicle for such an instance like that, and you would see how quickly you will get the support of the community when you're out there as the chief, as the assistant chief, as the lieutenant or sergeant driving around in this Hummer, handing out free ice cream to the kids, building a relationship, because the majority of the time, children and adults see us on bad circumstances. That's why everybody likes firemen. Nobody likes police, you know, because firemen do all the cool stuff and we do all the bad stuff. But we got to turn it, and we got to get people to like us. So we change the face. And how do we do it? We publicize all the good things we do, but we never shy or hide the bad things that we do. We will get out in front and address it, and we'll hold ourselves accountable. Chief, I believe that I cannot hold you accountable if I don't hold myself accountable. I am a man of integrity. I've had my integrity questioned many times, but I address it.
Thank you for your time. Candidate Burr, would you like the question repeated?
No, sir, I'm fine. To answer your question, I think the department, number one, has come a long way in the past 5 or 6 years. I don't think things are already being done in the department, and they just need to be promoted. I think those good things that are happening every day in the department need to be advertised. I think those good officers that help somebody cross the street, that needs to be put out there. I think forming partnerships with media, formal media, social media, you do all of those things to get the word out on what your police department is doing. The good things that your police department is doing, and like he said, when the bad things happen, you need to get out in front of it, but I guarantee you, if you have enough of that positive image out there already, those leaders in your community, the formal leaders and the informal leaders, are gonna stand behind the police department going, I know they're gonna do the right thing, and they're not gonna shy away going, oh, here we go again. That's not gonna happen, because there's gonna be positive relationships. There's going to be a positive image of the police department, and the men and women of the police department is what makes that, not the chief of police.
Thank you. Candidate Rico, would you like the question repeated?
The usual stuff with the social media is already there. I think Socorro's have been trying to rebuild their image, and they're doing a good job at it. I think it really kind of falls back on the interaction that the officers have with the community, not just with the community as in social events, stuff like that. I go back to conducting traffic stops on how officers treat the people and how the officers see how the people are, and the people can see that the officers have some type of discretion. Use some type of discretion to where they feel comfortable with the officer. Of course, if they're seriously violating the law, they're gonna wind up getting a ticket, but there's gonna be situations where you just wanna educate someone and you issue a warning. I think what I get a lot from citizens is that the police are always out to get you. So we just have to be a little bit more proactive, kind of switch over to things like you said earlier. When you're working Stone Garden and you're working the ATV and you're working the border, we can kind of direct some of that or get some type of grants to be able to direct it towards working with the community and rebuilding it that way. You have asset forfeitures that you have. You can probably use that positive to try to give back to the community, and they see that. And even if they know that that asset forfeiture comes from drugs or whatnot, they'll see the fact that you're using that for a positive for the community, not just to go get a Hummer, not just to go get a F-150. They see that you're rebuilding the community by buying something that you're gonna be able to rebuild the relationship from the community.
Thank you, candidates, and good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, sir.
My name is Albert Ortiz. I'm retired El Paso Fire Department, EMD, EMT. Now, one thing, being public safety, ex-public safety, we do have, you talk about keeping good officers, it's called a pension. Do y'all have any plans for pension for Socorro PD? I think that's what we need to keep some of our officers here. That's what kept me going, kept a lot of us going. You look down the road, you look for promotion, you look for retirement. Do y'all have any plans for maybe a pension for our Socorro PD officers?
We'll go ahead and start with candidate Rico.
I speak from experience. I come from Horizon City PD. It took us 2 years. It took us at least 10 years to try to start building on the defined retirement plan that we have. It doesn't take much, but it takes the support of the city employees. It takes the support of the citizens. We had to put it out to vote, and we were out there petitioning, we were out there demonstrating, and we luckily got the backup from the citizens to be able to get TMRS. I had 20 years invested in that, and I had my whole life pretty much invested. We had a deferred payment plan, but it works, it's good, but it's not a real pension plan. Going right back to what you were talking about, I completely forgot, is it takes retention, and I think retention brings experience. If you're able to retain your officers, they wind up getting the experience. I looked at how much experience is in this department. There's a lot of young officers that you want to build to get the experience to be able to make actually management's job a lot easier, because they have the experience that they know how to deal with people, and they have that feeling good about, now we have a pension plan. I feel completely comfortable now. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have been applying for this position. I would have still been trying to build Horizon to the point where we got the pension plan. I have a lot of experience with TMRS because I work directly with the chief to implement that. So you might get a little bit of resistance, but at the end, if you get the support, it's something that's going to be extremely good, and it'll definitely retain the officers, and it'll make the complaints a lot less because of that.
Thank you. Candidate Burr, same question. Do you need it repeated?
Yes, please.
Mr. Ortiz, can you repeat your question?
Yes, my question is, do y'all have a pension plan for the Socorro PD? That's what retains a lot of our officers.
And I do believe that retention should be a top priority of the Socorro PD, because we want to retain those officers that are already here. You know, as far as a pension plan, I think right now, what we can do in order to retain those officers is, the number one, you know, there's a lot of young officers and they may not understand deferred compensation. So right now, in order to retain those officers, I think we need to educate them on what is available and what it can do for you in the future. So I think, number one, educating them on the current plan that we have. In the future, I think it's important to have those conversations with the city manager, the mayor, and the city council, as well as the community, on how we can go about implementing and building and trying to get a pension plan for the Socorro PD. I think it is important. I think it is very important. But again, right now, in order to retain what we already have and to bring more officers in, I think we need to educate them on what we have, what it could do for them in the future, and then gradually work to build towards that pension plan.
Thank you. Candidate Gampa, would you like the question repeated?
No, sir, I have it. Yes, sir, there's always a plan. Now, you know, since I've been out here talking to the officers and hearing what we're hearing today, pension is very important. Unfortunately, me as the chief, I don't have the power to just wave my wand and create a pension plan. So the way we would start doing it, now that I know that it's a very important issue for the officers, is we start to strategically plan for it. And how do we do that? We start planning by building the trust with the community, because the community is eventually, they're the ones who are going to actually vote for us and get us that pension, okay? Having a pension is a great sense of security, because I've got one, you have one, and we know we always look forward to it. And unfortunately, I didn't start thinking about my pension till my 19th year, when I said, oh, and looking, and my hat's off to the chief, to the acting lieutenant. You guys have weathered a storm, and has anybody that's been in this department earned their pension? My God, you have, and that's something that we have to do, okay? They've been here a long time. They've weathered a lot of storms, and they deserve to get that pension. So now that I know that's important, we put that into our strategic plan. It's part of our retention plan as well that I've spoken about earlier, and now it's my job, because that's what they want, to come talk to Ms. Rodarte and address those issues and try to get it done. Are we going to get it done overnight? Probably not. Chief Rico said it took him 10 years. Hopefully it won't take us that long. But the first thing we got to do is we got to change that preconceived notion that the people have of the police department. And we're not going to be able to do that overnight. But it can be done, because I've done it. I know how to do it. And the minute we get that done is when we start asking for that pension plan. And we start showing them, and the community will start supporting us, and then they'll start talking to their representatives and saying, hey, you know what, they deserve this, they deserve that. We've got great examples, as I pointed out, the chief and the lieutenant. They've weathered a lot of storms. And I think there was another person here who's been that's been here longer than you all have, who's also weathered the storm when I saw your staffing table online. So I think that, is there a plan? If there's not, there will be.
Thank you for your response. Candidate Herrera, would you like the question repeated?
No, sir, I haven't. Sir, thank you for your service with the El Paso Fire Department. Being a firefighter is a very dangerous job, and thank you. I'm a firm believer and an advocate also of a formal pension plan, being a retiree from the El Paso Police Department. I would in a collaborative fashion, work with the city manager, maybe form a committee with elected officials, and see the feasibility of establishing, or at least looking into a pension plan. The TMRS, Texas Municipal Retirement System, has a pension plan. We can possibly invite them to make a presentation to the city of Socorro as to what the contribution the city would have to match, along with the employee's contribution, to have a viable, solvent, and fluid pension. The good thing about having a pension is that you get a check every month for the rest of your life. In addition to that, if you have a wife or a beneficiary, and when you pass away, they get that check if it's your wife. So it's very good financial security for public servants or city employees. I don't have that authority. I don't think that this department has collective bargaining, if I'm just assuming it doesn't. But I would look at the feasibility by inviting TMRS or other pension plans and to work with the city manager and the elected officials and get the presentations going and see. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time. But I am a believer in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we have time for one more question.
Good afternoon, candidates. I am not going to ask you a question. I'm kind of going to give you a blueprint, whoever our next chief is, of where to start looking and where we have failed for the past, for the history of this department. My name is Asiel Munoz. Maybe most of you guys don't know me. I'm a patrol sergeant here with the city of Socorro, and most recently I was the acting chief of police before I got activated for my military obligation. First and foremost, I want to congratulate all of you guys for making it as finalists to our department. Our next leader is sitting right here between you guys. One of you four will be our next leader, our next tip of the spear. What we don't want is somebody that's gonna just bend when the stress is too high. And we've all lived it here before. Council and the old officers that are here. So I'm gonna give you a few pointers of where to start looking and where to start listening to your senior officers, to the people that actually wanna be here. I plan to retire out of this department, whether I have a pension or not. The position of the police department is a very unique one. Whenever you guys come in, whoever comes in, you guys are gonna have a culture shock of how we do things in this department. You guys are gonna be amazed of how we survived so long without being sued, without being shut down as an agency, or most importantly, without being killed, one of our officers being killed the way we do operations here. What I can tell you is that if you wish to succeed here, you're going to have to roll up your sleeves and get dirty from time to time. That's going to be one of the things that we will be looking for. Hit our streets, get a feel for the people of Socorro, you know? Sweat, shed that blood, sweat, and tears that some of us have left here on the streets. You know, most of you guys have a little bit of white hair on you, but in my 36 years this white hair that you see, it wasn't because of the military. It was because of the stresses of this department and what we've had to gone through for a long, long time. I will tell you this, please begin your focus with the basic operations of our patrol. That's our foundation for this department. That's where it all begins, in the patrol division. Build a strong organization and foundation by addressing the basic patrol issues. I guarantee you, candidates, whoever it is, that if you guys start there, most of everything else will fall into place within the organization. I guarantee you that, because you will have the support of most of the police department, 90% to 95% of the police department, because that's where that's what we're looking at. That's what we've been lacking. That's their Achilles tendon. By having a first look at this, you guys are going to start realizing that where to look and where to start looking to implement our policies and procedures. You might have a policy and procedure that is square, but our city is a round. You can't fit that square peg on that round hole. It will never work. And historically, it hasn't worked yet, and we have yet seen it. We have yet seen it to change. Our disciplinary process is outdated, and there is no standard process to adjudicate discipline across the board. So there is no real way of showing fairness across the board. And that's how we began. That's how we began starting the rumors. That's how we began starting the perception of favoritism, because there's no fair process to adjudicate that disciplinary action. You're going to have to come up with a strategy to rebuild the broken trust that the police department and that community had. You know, only because your predecessors engaged in a pattern of unethical behavior before. That's why we are so broken. That's why we are so beat up. Anybody else here will tell you. The officers that are here are officers that have been here through thick and thin. We have weathered storms left and right. And when I took the position of the acting chief of police, the first thing I told the rookies that were here, I go, we've been here. This is a test for you. So with that being said, you guys have your work cut out for yourself, and I want to thank you for that. Thank you very much.
At this time, our session has ended. Can I please get another round of applause for all the candidates? There are still refreshments in the back. Please help yourself. If you have any further questions or concerns, please call our administration office at 858-2915 or stop on by this table. Thank you.